Hi, I'm Courtney Morrison, and you're listening to Engagement Drivers, presented by EveryoneSocial. Each week, we'll share actionable tips, strategies, and success stories that you and your teams can use to steer your brand, social, and employee engagement in the right direction. And we're back. I am pumped for this episode, and you should be too, because we have Todd Kunsman on the show today. Todd is our fearless marketing leader at EveryoneSocial and is just such a wealth of knowledge for really everything when it comes to marketing. I learn so much from him every day, and I'm excited to share a bit of that genius with everyone today. So welcome, Todd.
Thanks, Courtney. That was an interesting intro there. I don't stroke my ego too much there, but thank you for that.
I mean it.
It's
true.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
So I wanted to talk about something near and dear to our hearts at EveryoneSocial, the debate between paid advertising and employee advocacy. What they are, how they work, is one better than the other, or should we be doing both? So, Todd, can you explain how paid advertising and employee advocacy compare to each other as marketing strategies?
Yeah, happy to. So we first kind of started talking about this kind of debate between paid advertising and employee advocacy because customers and prospects were asking about it. For marketing and sales, it's an easy comparison because of clicks, shares, conversions, things like that. And people were looking at like, what would it cost us to paid advertising if, through employee advocacy? So that was one reason we're kind of like, okay, we should kind of look into this reporting and figure out what, how this compares. Additionally to, people are sometimes scoff at the idea of paying for employee advocacy, which is kind of funny to think about, but I get at the same time that it's still new to a lot of people and it's kind of, might be an unproven model to them. So they have no problem spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on paid advertising, which may or may not work as great as they think it is, but are concerned with the idea of spending a fraction of that on employee advocacy. So we wanted to put this kind of report and topic together. But yeah, both are definitely used for the same kind of things, reach, clicks, driving attention, brand awareness. So there's pros and cons to both, but each of these kind of things work together. And I think that's why there's that kind of comparison currently.
So from your standpoint, is one better than the other? Does one create more value? How do you sort of measure them next to each other?
Yeah, so that's the ultimate question, right? Is one better than the other? And when we were piecing this together, figuring out how we wanted to display the report, we could have easily said, hey, paid advertising is dead. Choose employee advocacy. We could be biased and kind of say that, but didn't really want to go that route. I think as some people who, view our content all the time know, we like to try to be fair about our evaluations of things, but also that we want to provide value up front. So, when we came to doing this report, we kind of said, let's put paid advertising versus employee advocacy, do the comparison. But what we found is that both are just as important and one isn't necessarily better than the other. There's different nuances to each one, but they should work together and can really impact your business overall. And we do it ourselves, right? Like we use our own advocacy platform internally for marketing and sales, but of course other things like comms and employee engagement and employer brand. But these things really work together, and we do paid advertising as well. So we can kind of dive into that a little bit. But yeah, I don't think there's necessarily was one better than the other. Of course, I lean a little bit towards more employee advocacy just because I've been seeing the impact from businesses, our own impact, and kind of the pros and cons of each thing and how it works today.
Can you give an example of that impact?
Yeah, certainly. So, one we can say is from a customer. I won't name them just for the sake of this podcast, but they did a campaign where they had employee advocacy in the first 6 months, and then they also did paid advertising for that campaign at the same time. What they found is their employee advocacy program, they were generating all these trial signups. They were generating a lot of clicks and impressions, and they also generated revenue that actually paid for their advocacy program within the first 6 months. They also did the same campaign in a paid advertising where, again, generating a lot of clicks and impressions, but they had no trial signups, no revenue generated from it. I'm sure they got some downloads from some things if I recall, But it kind of shows that comparison right there that they had, they're a well-known company. They have a good marketing team. So it wasn't like their targeting or anything was off. It's just showing that paid advertising is just becoming a lot more difficult.
I love looking at the data and the results and comparing the two. I think it's just so cool what you can see when people are sharing about their company anyway. Like everyone is talking about their work, especially on LinkedIn. And it just makes sense to invest in tools that will help people build their own personal brands and encourage people to share easily.
Absolutely.
There's just the benefits are compounding every metric that we look at. It's really exciting. How can someone see how their paid advertising would stack up to employee advocacy? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, there's a couple of things you can do. One, obviously, if you're using an employee advocacy platform, you're going to get reporting data and information that's going to be valuable to you. So, for our report that we did, which you can actually see in the footer of our website, it's called Paid Advertising. You click that, it goes in how we calculated a lot of stuff, kind of doing the comparison and things we're talking about. But internally on a program, you're going to get reporting data about your impressions and clicks and things like that. So, working with your team to understand what your average cost per click is going to help you kind of start calculating some numbers and kind of understanding the value. The same thing with like an earned media value kind of number. That will give you some insights. Additionally, every program should have some kind of integration with UTM's tracking, which can be passed through analytics or any of your other kind of tools where reporting is being pulled in. So that's how that customer example that I've provided before, that's kind of how they figured out, their trials, the signups, and revenue that they generated through their advocacy platform compared to paid ads. So it's kind of eye-opening when they're able to kind of see those things. Additionally, we just recently built an ROI calculator, which will exist under our Learn section on our website as well. So for those that are playing around with some numbers or unsure of a program, can enter in some information. It kind of spits out a report. It basically shows you like, this is what it would cost potentially to reach, in paid advertising platforms. And what we kind of did there is we took the average cost per click across the main channels. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Google, and did the overall average of that. It came down to about $3.15, which is a pretty conservative number because honestly, like being in marketing and having worked in a marketing agency before, I've seen what some of these companies' cost per clicks are. The costs get pretty insane, especially on like a LinkedIn or Google. Certainly, it's a great place to kind of get in front of some of your target audience, but you really start to spend a lot of money to hopefully get some results. The good thing is you get the brand awareness play, but you're spending a lot of dollars to kind of get in front of those people. So that number is pretty conservative. It can average anywhere, maybe a little bit cheaper pending your industry. It could be a lot more expensive, but we kind of use that baseline. And then we've also found that employees generally have an average of 1,000 social connections across all their social channels. So we're using those numbers to really kind of calculate an overall idea of what you could potentially see. And that kind of helps, I think, encourage people to understand like, oh, okay, there is value with employee advocacy. Sometimes it's hard to understand the value without seeing some data or understanding some numbers, which is kind of why we pieced all these things together, because there really wasn't just a lot of information out there about it. And the question continually came up for those in marketing and sales who, might wanted to compare it to advertising.
The calculator is so cool. I'll put a link to it in the show notes so that anyone listening to this can get access to that easily. It's really cool to see like what that dollar value would be today. And then when you think about how we see that, people that are using employee advocacy programs are growing their networks at like 10% a year, it's like amazing to think about how that's just going to keep growing in the future. So it's a really, really cool tool. Yeah,
looking forward to seeing people get to use that. What's kind of cool is it'll create a PDF version of your things that you enter and the results. So what's kind of cool is anyone who's interested in employee advocacy could take that and share it with their management team or executives to kind of, build justification for why it's important to use. Awesome. Well, thank you, Todd, for coming on today and sharing a little glimpse of everything that we're working on. Of course. Yeah. Thanks, Courtney, for having me.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with more engagement insights. Want to know how EveryoneSocial can provide you with the tools needed to keep everyone at your company connected, informed, creating, and sharing? Visit EveryoneSocial.com to learn more.